everybody, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. This is your host, Ryan Coyle, back with another episode for the weekly fantasy football show. Had some stuff happen, needed to take a little bit time off from the pod. Wasn't able to record the past 2 weeks, but here we are. We're back this week. Sadly, to report coming off our first loss of the season, though. For the weekly start sit list, going into week 6, we were 5-0 on the year. Lost week 6 by about 15 points, I think it was. And then we didn't record week 7 and 8. I'll be here the rest of the season, though, giving you your go-to fantasy football show for your lineups each and every week. Had been killing it the past few weeks. Like I said, took the past 2 weeks off for some stuff. And then we only lost once. So we're 5-1 on the season so far, and we're looking to go. We'll go a perfect, 15-1 after missing 2 shows. We'll finish out 10-0 here the rest of the way. So won't recap week 6 as it was a few weeks ago. No one cares about that. We'll just get right into the start and the sits. If this is your first time listening to the show, we give you 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 2 tight ends to start every week. And then we also give you 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 2 tight ends to sit each week. And then we also throw in a defense there as well. So we'll start it off with the quarterbacks. As always, we start at the top there. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers. I have him on the start list this week. I'm an Aaron Rodgers fantasy owner in, I believe, 2 of my 6 fantasy leagues, and he's been a major disappointment this year. But he gets a 1-6 Detroit Lions team this week. If this Packers offense is ever going to wake up in the passing game, it has to be this week. Lions have been one of the worst defenses in the entire NFL this year. This is such a good matchup for the Packers to potentially just get right. Lions just fired their defensive backs coach this week. That's how bad they've been. They feel like they needed kind of a shakeup back there. It might just be a lack of overall talent on the back end. I think the Packers are going to kind of go on a bit of a run. I think the Vikings division is still theirs to lose, but I could see the Packers squeaking in even after this slow start as one of the 6 or 7 seeds. And then we come back later in the season and we look and the Packers are somehow in the NFC title game or something. I feel like when their backs are against the wall is kind of when Aaron Rodgers is best and not when they're kind of coasting. I think maybe this game is the game that they've kind of flipped the script of this season. I think Aaron Rodgers has a really nice performance in this one. Historically has dominated the Lions as well. Next quarterback on our list to start, we're going to go with Trevor Lawrence versus the Raiders. The Raiders have been, I think you can make a pretty good argument, maybe the most disappointing team in the league this year. I know, I was just saying, the Packers have struggled, the Rams have struggled, the Bucks. There's no one really outside of the Eagles, Bills, and Chiefs have been really thriving this year. The Raiders, super talented team, sitting at 2-5, I believe now. Maybe even it's 2-6, but they've really struggled. Shut out last week against the New Orleans Saints. The defense is just not very good. Trevor Lawrence, I think, and the Jaguars, I have a few guys on the Jags on my list this week. I think that they have a good chance to exploit this Raiders defense, especially in the secondary. That's not good. The Jaguars have been on a bit of a cold streak as well. I think this could be a potential another get-right game. If you're a daily fantasy streamer or you have a quarterback on a bye this week, maybe look at Trevor Lawrence for the cheap option or off the waiver wire. Go to the running backs now. Raheem Mostert at the Bears for the Dolphins. Jeff Wilson Jr. just got traded to the backfield, but I don't know if he's going to play right away. I know he knows Mike McDaniel's offense from his time with the 49ers, but still it's a whole new kind of coaching staff and depth chart that he needs to kind of find his place in. I don't think he'll be getting that many carries off the bat. So I think Raheem Mostert with Chase Edmonds getting traded is going to get the Lions or the Dolphins share of the carries this week against the Bears. And he's just set up to have a good week. Tony Pollard had, I believe it was 14 carries for nearly 140 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns last week against the Bears. I'm not expecting Mostert to put up those type of numbers, but he's that explosive back that can make those big runs. So look for him to have a nice week this week. Running back Tyler Algier of the Falcons, rookie versus the Chargers this week. Cordell Patterson just got activated off IR. It looks like he could be back this week, but I don't expect coming back off an injury off IR. They'll give him the full share of Falcons carries once again. I think Tyler Algier has carved out a nice role in this backfield recently. And he gets a matchup against a Chargers defense that has been terrible under Brandon Staley on the run, not just this year, but last year as well. So historically looking at that, a bad rush defense, probably can get Algier on the cheap or another guy where he might be on your bench right now. You have a few guys injured or you have some guys on bye. Algier, I think, would be a nice start for you this week. Go to the receiver position now. We're going to go with Christian Kirk. He's playing the Raiders, as I talked about earlier. I think that the Jaguars have a nice week this week on the offensive side of the football against a bad Raiders defense. Christian Kirk has had a really nice season so far. He's just been pretty solid each and every week. Started out really hot, kind of faltered a little bit for a few weeks stretch, but he's been pretty consistent week after week, and he's a nice, reliable guy. I think he could have a pretty big boom week this week against the Raiders. Second receiver, we're going to go Terry McLaurin versus the Vikings. He really struggled with Carson Wentz in the lineup since Taylor Heinicke came back. Surprise, surprise, he's played better, as I think Heinicke is a better quarterback than Wentz. And he gets a Vikings team where if they have one weak link, it's that secondary in the corner spot. McLaurin had a really nice week last week against the Colts, who have a pretty strong secondary. So I like Terry McLaurin to have another good week, continue this kind of second half resurgence. We go to the tight end now. We're going to go with Gerald Everett at the Falcons. He's a guy I gave you guys, if you've been listening to my fantasy content coming into the year, a guy that I thought had a chance to have a bit of a breakout year and kind of was a sleeper guy, has found a really nice relationship with Justin Herbert. As you've heard me say before about the tight ends, if you don't have Travis Kelce, and I think you can even throw like Dallas Goedert into that equation now, maybe even like Mark Andrews, to kind of picking your tight ends every week or playing your tight ends or just throwing darts at the board. You just got to hope you hit a bullseye. Everett has certainly good potential. Sounds like Keenan Allen's hamstring injury is getting worse, even though he was on bye last week. So there should be plenty of targets for him. Gerald Everett this week with Mike Williams most likely out as well. Second tight end, I'm going to go Taysom Hill again versus the Ravens. I had him in there last episode when we did this back in week 6. Didn't really perform that week, but Monday Night Football, I feel like he always has like his big games on national TV. Like it'll be a Sunday night or a Thursday night game, and they'll just find ways to give him the football in creative ways. And you're scrolling through Twitter, and it's, oh my God, how did Taysom Hill do this? I can just see it now, like 2 rushing touchdowns from Taysom Hill this week, maybe even like a passing one thrown in or some passing yards, make some crazy play on like a punt coverage team, and they're like, wow, Taysom Hill, and they're just jocking him left and right. So I think national TV is where Taysom Hill shines best. And I forgot to write a defense down, so we're going to pick this one on the fly. We don't give you layup ones. Like I could give you the Eagles versus the Texans on Thursday Night Football. Trying to find you a bit of a value play here. Let's go with the Bengals this week against the Panthers. They really struggled last week against the Browns. That was a weird kind of Monday Night Football game. Felt like it was like a trap spot, and it turned out to be. I'm not counting on the Panthers to continue to have offensive success with P.J. Walker and Deontay Foreman. You probably could get the Bengals as a really nice, cheap streaming defense, or like I've said with a few of these other things, if you have a defense or a player on a bye right now, and the Bengals are most likely out there, I think that they have a chance to have a pretty decent week this week. So to run back through the starts real quick, I'm going Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, Raheem Mostert at running back, Tyler Algier at running back, Christian Kirk and Terry McLaurin at receiver, Gerald Everett and Taysom Hill at tight end. And then defense, we will go with, writing this down so I remember, the Bengals versus the Panthers. Now we'll get into the sit options. We'll start it off with one of the best stories of the NFL this season, but he struggled against them the first time they played. That's Geno Smith at the Cardinals. I like the Cardinals to win this week. They have their backs against the wall, 3-5. They fall to 3-6. Their season's pretty much over. I think they need a win desperately this week, and I think they come to play at home. They find a way to get to Geno Smith. The Seahawks, great story and all, but still, the truth comes out eventually in terms of this team's talent. Not the most talented team in the NFL, clearly, but they've found ways impressively to string together wins. They have to have a hiccup coming sooner or later, kind of a regression game, and I think this could be it. Geno Smith struggles in this one, in my opinion. Second quarterback we're going to sit this week, we're going to go Justin Fields versus the Dolphins. He's had a few nice weeks back-to-back here. I think the Bears might have a decent shot to win this game, but I think it's going to be like an ugly one, like 13-10, 16-13, something like that. Fields still not really throwing it that well. They just did add Chase Claypool, but I don't know how much he'll play this week. Dolphins went out, added Bradley Chubb. They already have a pretty nice defense to begin with. Just not an intriguing matchup for a player that could be on the rise, and he might be starting for some teams by the end of the season. But this week, I'm looking to keep him out of the lineup. Just need to see some more passing production out of him. Even with the rushing bonus that he adds, it's still a bit of a worry for me, and I think they're better options this week. Running back, we're going to sit DeAndre Swift versus the Packers. I feel bad for him just because it feels like he's never healthy, and when he is healthy, he's dominating out there, and they do love Jamal Williams and find the way to give him the ball a lot too. Recording this on Wednesday, he didn't practice today with his ankle and shoulder injuries, somehow has injuries to both. Plays a Packers defensive front that's pretty good. And last week, even though he found the end zone through the air, he still only rushed for 4 yards. Maybe they were easing him back into it, but Jamal Williams looks to be like the number one guy in their backfield right now. I think that kind of says all you need to know about the Lions. Swift, clearly the more talented player, has struggled to stay healthy. Williams kind of taken over that job, but he's not a number one NFL running back. But I'm keeping DeAndre Swift on the bench this week if I'm a fantasy owner. Running back, Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus the Titans. Chiefs coming off a bye here. Just made kind of a little bit of a mental note. The week before the bye, that Bills game, I think it was the Bills game. I forget off the top of my head, but they put Isaiah Pacheco, the rookie running back out of Rutgers, into the starting lineup. I think that was kind of, usher him into that new role. I think this is going to be not necessarily his backfield now. I think Edwards-Helaire and McKinnon are still going to have roles, but going into the bye week, they kind of, all right, you're our starting running back now. You're going to be that guy over the second half of the season. And I think he's going to be getting a lot of the touches out of that Chiefs backfield. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think, still going to have a bit of a role, but more of like a flex option. I'm not looking to start him as like my running back 2 this week in fantasy. And he plays the Titans defensive front, which is good. Jeffrey Simmons up front, he can be a game wrecker on that side of the ball each and every play. I'm just not looking to start Edwards-Helaire. I think his role is too much up in the air right now. Wide receiver, we have 2 really big name guys this week we're looking to sit. One, Michael Pittman Jr. at the Patriots. That over is 39.5. Under is 39 and over under 39.5. I really like the under in that game. I could see it being similar to that Washington Commanders Colts game last week, and we get like a 16-14 type final. Real ugly game, a lot of running the football. Not trusting Sam Ehlinger right now as a passer, especially against Bill Belichick. He dominates on these young, inexperienced quarterbacks, especially the first time he plays them, and that'll spell disaster for Michael Pittman Jr. as well against a strong Patriots secondary. Next receiver we're looking to sit, we're going to go Mike Evans versus the Rams. Him and Jalen Ramsey going at it back and forth. I'm not very confident in that. These are 2 teams in dire kind of desperation mode to get a win this week. A big game for both of them. Should make it a really exciting game. But Mike Evans, I remember last year in the playoffs, Jalen Ramsey was controlling him most of that game. And then Mike Evans had that, in the midst of that comeback run, had that late deep touchdown. But other than that, Ramsey, I'm pretty sure, took him out for most of the game. This is a type of battle, too, where I can see these 2 getting really physical going at it and like one of them throwing punches and getting ejected or something. This matchup scares me for Mike Evans. That's why I'm keeping him out of the lineup. And then we go to the tight ends. We're going to sit Kyle Pitts versus the Chargers. I think matchup-wise, the best matchup to cover Kyle Pitts will have Derwin James on him for most of the game. Probably the best safety in the entire NFL, just kind of a thing that I'm looking to stay away from. And as I touched on with Tyler Algier and Cordell Patterson coming back and Marcus Mariota's ability to run the ball as well, I could see them throwing the ball 10 to 12 times total this week and just really pounding the rock against a bad Chargers rush defense. And then our other tight end, we're sitting. He's had a bit of a resurgence over these last few weeks and starting to find more of a role, but I'm going to sit tight end Mike Gesicki at the Bears. I think he's due for a bit of a letdown regression game. Like I was saying with starting tight ends, sitting tight ends as well, it's kind of hard to find guys. I mean, I could give you backup tight ends or guys who are getting 1 or 2 targets a week. I'm trying to find a guy that I just looking at the matchup, I don't think he's going to have that great of a week this week. I think this is going to be a lower scoring, run heavy type of game between the Bears and the Dolphins. We don't see a lot of points. That's not going to equal a lot of fantasy receiving yards, catches, or touchdowns for Mike Gesicki. So sick guy. Oh, excuse me. And then we have to sit at defense. We'll go to a live pick right here. We'll sit the Jets. The Jets are the Pro Football Focus #1 rated defense right now in the entire NFL. And they play the Buffalo Bills this week. You're not going to want to start a team playing the Buffalo Bills. So we're going to start the Jets sit the Jets versus the Bills this week. So round out the sit list, we got Geno Smith and Justin Fields at quarterback, DeAndre Swift, Clyde Edwards-Helaire at running back, Michael Pittman Jr. and Mike Evans at receiver. Never thought I would see that duo on there. Mike Gesicki and Kyle Pitts at tight end. And then defense, we're going to sit the Jets versus the Bills. Not many people are probably starting them to begin with, but they've had a really nice year on the defensive side of the ball. They could have been like a streaming option for you this week. Obviously, with the Bills, we're looking to sit them. But that'll do it for week 9. I apologize to those of you who listen to this show on a consistent basis for being out these past 2 weeks, but we're back. We're ready to go and roll the rest of the season here on the Beef Up Front Fantasy Football Show. Start 'em, sit 'em. Looking forward to get back in the win column this week, and look forward to recapping this week's victory and getting back after it next week. We will talk soon.